Okay, actually, let me just upload this. So I'm going to upload today's notes. We don't need to see them. Jquery, Ajax is a tool that allows you to refresh elements of your web page without reloading the entire page. Okay? And what this allows us to do is it allows us to bring the desktop experience, or at least a little bit more of it, into the web. Okay? So Ajax is an acronym. It stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Okay? But you can actually XML is just how many of you know what XML is or have worked with XML? None? Okay. Yeah, so you've heard of it, but you don't really know what it is, right? Okay. XML is just a way of formatting information. Okay? So let's say we're working on our doctor's web page again. Remember, we've been using an example for our server-side stuff a lot, and we were making a page for a doctor's office. And we had patient records. Okay? So what if we wanted to transmit, let's say, a patient record from a server, from one computer to another computer? We wanted to transfer that information. So we can put that information in many, many different formats. Right? One of them is like a comma delimited file, for example. So we could just delimit each of our fields using a comma, and then maybe we could have each new line in our file represent a record or something. Okay, that's one way. Another way is using XML. Okay, so XML is just it looks similar to it looks similar. I don't think I have any examples of Do I have any examples here? Let's see. Of XML. I might have to look one up here. Yeah. Okay. So let's just quickly look up an example. So XML. Let's see here. Where's it good? View. Here we go. Okay. So here it looks a lot like HTML, if you notice. Okay. And so what we're doing is we're using these these tags to organize our data, okay, in a way that it's somewhat human readable. Like, you can sort of just look at this document and make sense of it. In a way, it's more human readable than other formats, but also it allows for easy machine reading. Okay, so notice here it's just like HTML, where we have note is our outermost tag or node. Okay, so this whole thing here represents, quote, a note, right? This entity known as a note. Okay, and inside the note we have 4 more entities. Okay, so we have 2 from, the heading, and the note body. Okay, and we could have within the body, just like HTML, right? We have the HTML, and then we have the body, and then we have paragraph, and then in paragraph we can have anchor, right? It's the same thing. We can have tags nested in tags. Okay, so this is one file format that we can use to transmit information. Okay, so just because so Ajax, the X in Ajax stands for XML, but we don't have to use XML. What's popular nowadays, a lot of projects that I've worked on doesn't use XML. What we use now is Json. So Json is similar. Oh, so I do have some examples here. Json is similar to Ajax. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Okay, and its job is the same. So here we have XML. So this looks familiar to what we just looked at on the web, right? So we have here we have one large entity. So management, That's the outermost entity, and then inside we have two team members. Right? So we have Agnes, who's the vice president, and we have Wilbur, who's the founder and CEO. Okay? Now here, this is JSON. This is the same data, but formatted in JSON rather than XML. But it's the same. So notice we have a large entity here, so management. In this case, it's not labeled. Then inside, we have team members, and then we have two team members. One is named Agnes and is vice president, and one is named Wilbur and is founder. Right? So notice the same information, just in different formats, but it's the same thing. XML and JSON, they do the same thing. Okay? It's like gasoline or diesel. Right? They both propel cars, essentially. It's the same thing. So with Ajax, what we can do is we can send XML from our server. We can send XML or JSON data, and then we can include that information in our website without refreshing the page. And we can create a really unique, well, not a unique. It's not unique anymore, but a really interesting and good. I'm not picking the best words here, but a good. You can create a more user-friendly interface. Okay, because you know when the page is constantly refreshing, disappearing, coming back, disappearing, coming back, it limits you in what you can do as far as interaction. Okay, so we're not going to get too deep into XML or JSON in this course. If you'd like to know more about the finer details of it, you know, take a look at it. But you know, these are the types of things where when you need to use it, you look up the format, and then you know, you create your objects, and then you kind of forget about it until the next time that you use it. Okay. So any questions on what XML and JSON is, and what Ajax is so far? Okay, because we're going to take a look at some examples. We're going to do some actual. Sorry? No, Ajax is JavaScript. It's just another part of the JavaScript language that we haven't looked at yet, but it is fully JavaScript. What we're doing, the stuff we're going to be writing today is JavaScript. I'll show it to you in raw JavaScript, and then I'll show you it in Jquery. But Ajax is, so remember, Ajax stands for Asynchronous JavaScript. It is JavaScript. Okay, so I guess I sort of glossed over that, but just always remember that, right? A lot of times, you know, people get, especially acronyms. Sometimes I hate acronyms. Ajax is okay, but a lot of times, especially if you work with in the business world, right? If you work at a bank or a large institution, they love acronyms, right? And it can get confusing because you know, Ajax. It sounds like another term, but it's just we're referring to another segment of JavaScript. So don't let all the acronyms and three-letter short forms confuse you. Okay. Okay. So the notes for today are on eCentennial. And okay, what we're going to do for our demos today, we have to. So the reason I am coming back to this. So this is part of JavaScript, and is JavaScript a server-side or a client-side technology? Client-side. But in this case, we're going to be using it to talk to some server-side technology. So you can kind of understand why I wanted to not include it right away when we were talking about strictly client-side technology, because now it's sort of, we're that boundary between client and server, we're blurring that a little bit. So you have to have knowledge of both before we can really talk about Ajax. So one of the things about Ajax, so I'm going to start my server, is that Chrome, I think, and probably most other browsers, don't like Ajax calls that aren't sent to a real server. So you can't run Ajax just locally through Internet Explorer, for example. You'll get an error. So we have to do things through our server. Okay. So let's okay, so our server's working. So let's create we're going to create our Ajax demo here. What do we want? We want a folder. Okay, Ajax Demo 2. Okay, so what we need to do is a couple of things. So first we're going to set up a actually hang on, let me just mail this stuff to myself so I can okay, I'm going to upload this. So I'm going to upload the demo right now. What do I want to compress to? Ajax Demo. Okay. So I recommend sort of following along and typing as I go, but I'll upload this now. So if you would rather just look at the finished example, you can do that. Shoot. Okay. Let me just pause this for a second. So the first thing, we're going to have a number of different files in this demo. So the first thing that we need to do is create our main index file that will basically, this will be our main page that we'll be living on, and that the data will be ferried to and from. Okay? So let me just download something here. This computer doesn't even have a text editor. Okay, sorry, just give me a minute. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is, so this one we'll, I think we'll do the JavaScript example first. So let me just find my, shit. Okay, 1 second. Sorry, I've been slow start for the demo today, but now we're up and running. So we're going to go to our Ajax demo. We have our index file. Did I already edit it? No. Okay. So we're going to edit this, and we will just set up a very, very basic HTML page. Okay? And we need a body. And so you guys should be able to do this basically as quick as I'm doing it here, because this is, you should be able to do that. Like, this would be maybe question 1 of the test. I might say, you know, create an HTML page with this, with a header, with this, with this, with this, with this, right? You should be able to just fire that off, no problem. Okay. We're going to have a paragraph here, and we're going to put some stuff. Something is here. And that's about it for now. So let's make sure everything's working. I always like to test as I go. Okay, so what did I call it? Ajax Demo 2. There we go. So there's our web page. Now the next thing we want to do is, we're in our head, we're just going to create links to some JavaScript code. So let's see here. Where is our okay. So what we want is we want a link to our JavaScript file where our Ajax calls are going to be located. So in this case, we'll just call it Ajax Demo.js. Okay. And so this file doesn't exist yet, so let's create it. Ajax Demo, did I say? .js. Okay. So let's edit it. And remember, I always like to test. Whenever I make a connection or add another module, let's just test to make sure everything is correct. Okay, what's up there? Oh, see? Little mistakes like that. And so remember, if I had gone further, right, and done more and nothing's working, I might be wasting time on thinking there's errors in my new code, right? That's why you should always test as you go, okay? Make sure things are working. There we go. So now our JavaScript file is ready to go. So again, get rid of alerts, because you should never really use alerts in your web page, just for your own purposes, for debugging and stuff, okay? So the next thing we need to do is, what we're going to do is start creating our Ajax calls. Okay, so we're going to create a function. Now, how many of you have worked with either multi-threading or any other asynchronous technology? Have you ever worked with multi-threading application? Okay, so this is going to be a little bit new to you guys, because what happens is functions will run, but the main thread also keeps running. Okay, so these functions that we're going to create handlers that run asynchronously. So that means basically at the same time. Okay, it's not synchronized with the rest of the thread. It doesn't do its command and then the main thread is waiting. The main thread keeps running as soon as this other asynchronous command is called. Okay, so let's do this. Let's. I'm just going to cheat a little bit and use Jquery just to create my event handler, just because it's a little easy. But I'm going to show you the actual Ajax in just regular JavaScript. So let me go back here. So I just copied Jquery here. So this is, you can download this or you can just use the CDN. Okay? And this is, so I'm just going to make a reference here to my Jquery file. Okay, or you can use the CDN. Okay. Whoops. Okay, so let's save this. So what we want to do is we're going to use the ready function. Okay. Because we don't want our Ajax calls to run before our entire web page is loaded. Okay. So okay, and we're going to close this off. Okay, and then inside, what we're going to do is, so I'm going to turn this H1. Remember, you can turn basically anything with JavaScript, and especially with jQuery, makes it easy. You can turn anything into a button. Okay, so this is an HTML element that looks like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook into the click event for H1. Okay, so let's go over here, and so what I'm going to do is just using jQuery, and then after we do this, I'll show you the pure jQuery solution. So I'm gonna select H1 or all H1s, and we're going to define the click event handler. Okay, so now we're going to define, so in here, right now, we could do this. Okay. Did I save? I did save. What am I missing here? If I put this, I think, yeah, no, that doesn't. Why did I have a function there? It doesn't make sense. What's going on here? Is this? Oh. And did I forget anything else? Let's try it. Let's see what the console says. Oh. Oh, it didn't like... Oh, I know why. Because this has to be first. Okay. Okay. Good. So see how, again, I tested, right? It was because I didn't install Jquery properly. Okay? So always, always, always test before you move on. Okay? Test to make sure that what you just did is working. Okay. So we'll get rid of this now. So now we're going to use some JavaScript. Okay? So the first thing that we do is we're going to create an HTTP request object. Okay? We're going to put it into a variable called XHR. Okay? And we're going to use the new keyword, and then we're going to create an XML HTTP request. Okay? And that's it for now. So we've created this new object, and now we're going to use this object to make an Ajax query, an Ajax call. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the open. No, wait. So we're going to what should we do first here? Okay. Let's do it in this order. So once we create our XHR object, now we can call an open. We're going to call the open function, and this actually makes the call happen. It's going to now make the call to the server and request the data back. Okay, so we're going to use the get method in this case, and then we give it the URL that we want it to access. So in this case, it's HTTP localhost. Whoops. Localhost, and it's in the folder Ajax Demo 2, and we're going to access a file called Team XML. Okay? And let's see, we're going to make the last argument true. And let me just double check what that last argument means. I think that means, let's just see. Why does it tell us here? Asynchronous, which is what we want. And I'll explain to you in a second what exactly that means. Okay, so we're calling that. So we're saying, I want you to open up and set up this request, and then finally we send the request. Okay? But here's the thing. This won't work. We haven't told the object what to do when you get the information back. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up above here, before this happens, we're going to set up in our XHR object, we're going to set the on ready state change. Okay? So this is an event that is raised once something is changed in the object. So whether it's preparing the request or sending the request or waiting or let's see, let's look up the Does it tell you here? So let's look up the Ajax states. Let's look them up. Okay, so here are the states. So 0 means the request isn't initialized. 1, the server connection has been established. 2, the request is received. 3, processing request. 4, finished response and excuse me. Finished. The request is finished and the data is ready. So those every time it switches from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. This, whatever we assign to this method, will run asynchronously. Okay? So we're defining the method, but the order that we're putting it in here, that has no meaning to when the function is run. And I'll see if I can show to you exactly exactly the order. I'll put some alert boxes and we'll see how it goes. Okay? So what we're doing now is, so we're going to create an anonymous function. So we're going to assign and create the function at the same time. Okay? So inside here, this is what's going to happen when the state changes. So let's do this. Let's just alert this. Okay? So let's try it, even though this file doesn't exist yet. So but this still should work because we're going to get this request not initialized, and then the server connection, and then we'll get a status 404, which is page not found. But the state will still change. Okay? So I'll put here state has been changed. So let's save it, and now let's run it. So we're going to refresh, and now I'm going to click here. Here we go. State has been changed. State has been changed. State has been changed. State has been changed, and that's it. So see, I made a request, and now here's the million-dollar question. Okay? So there's an alert box here. I'm going to put an alert box here and say, who is the first alert box? So, who wants to bet? Is this alert box going to be shown first, or this alert box? Which one? This one? This one is going to be the first alert box. How come? The status list? Sure. It doesn't matter. Let's look back here. I'll show you. So let's follow the program flow. Okay? So first, all of this stuff is defined and it's in memory. So then we click on the H1. We come in here. We define our object. Okay? Now we come in here and we define an event handler, but we don't run it yet. So we're just defining this and saving it for later. We're saying, okay, in the future, whenever the status changes, I want you to run this function, but don't run it right now. Okay? So this is just defined, and then the thread continues on. Then it's going to pop up this alert box. Then it's going to run this open. And then I don't think it won't until you hit send. Then this will start being run. This will run. Okay. So I think we can even. Can we get the status here? I think we can go. Don't have it in my example here. We could probably say. Oh yeah. So let's do this. Instead of saying alert, let's say xhr dot status. Oops. Okay? And let's see it. So remember, we should expect this one first, even though it comes second in the code. Okay? Okay, see? 0, 404, 404, 404. Okay? Because the file didn't exist. But it's very important to understand why this came up first. Okay? Because these functions are called asynchronously. It means any time, because we don't know how long the server is going to take to respond, and you don't want your application to be frozen. right? You want the rest of it. You want, like Google, a lot of it, and a lot of the modern websites that you go to, it loads sort of in modules, right? First the whole thing loads, and then sort of everything loads kind of in the middle, so that the other part of the website is available while the other things are loading. Okay? So let's go a little bit further now. So one thing we're going to do, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to steal the XML file from the old example. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to copy this, go back to our folder. So this is my XML file that's going to be on the server. Okay. So this is what it looks like, right? This is the demo, the example from the slides. So we have an entity called management, which is comprised of 2 team member entities, and each team member entity is comprised of 3 entities: name, title, and bio. Okay? So now that our file exists, let's look back at our code. Okay, so see, we're trying to access, and it's the wrong file name. So let's change this to team. Either way, we got to change one or the other. Okay? Yes. And it's probably easier just to change the. Okay. So let's try our query, our Ajax call again, and let's see what the pop-ups are. Okay. So I'll click. So remember, the first one comes up, 0, 200. So that actually means okay. Let's look back here. I can't, because see, this is why we don't use alert boxes, because now all of my windows are frozen. Okay? You don't want to do that. This is just for testing. 200, 200. Okay. So see, status 200 is okay. Okay? So far so good. So instead of so now what we can do is let's change it from, instead of status, we'll go to, let's print out the ready state. Okay, that's what these are here. There's status, which is okay, or page not found, and ready state, which is 1 of 5 possibly. Okay, so let's save and go back here and refresh. 1. Oh, I think I clicked over 2. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. So that means that it worked. It seems to have worked. Okay? So now let's actually do something with this. Okay? So let's do, instead of just alerting, let's do this. So we'll say, let's make another. So first we want to make sure, because remember, this function comes up whenever the status is changed. But the status could be bad. It could be error. So we have to have an if statement that checks. So we're going to say if xhr ready state equals 4. So that's done, right? Let's go back to our reference. 4 is good to go, right? We're done. Everything's good. So and xhr status equals 200. So it's okay, and we're done. That means we're good to go. Oops, and I destroyed my if statement here. Okay. So now what we want to do is, so we're going to create a local variable, and we'll just call it XML doc, and we'll use this we'll use the xhr object to get the response XML. Okay, and then we can use var team. So now we can use the XML doc, which is now an XML object. We can use now some JavaScript functions to parse out our data. Okay, so this is where the reason why JSON is so popular now is because the JSON syntax is already set up as a JavaScript object. So you can just take a JSON object and you use a function called eval in JavaScript, and it makes it into a JavaScript object, and now you can access it just like an object. Whereas with XML, you kind of have to do some of your own parsing. So they do the same thing, but JSON is, now we're fully living in JavaScript, right? XML is sort of this extra technology outside of JavaScript, but if we use JSON, now JavaScript is part of it. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to say get elements by tag name, and we're going to say team member, okay? And we're going to set up this HTML variable, which we will we'll populate in a second. And so now we're going to set up a loop. So we're going to say for int I equals 0, while I is less than team.length, I plus plus. Okay. And now, so this is almost like just working with MySQL, right? So we're going to get a response back, and now we need to iterate through our table. So we can do that. We can, like, you can have MySQL and PHP on the other side of this, generating our XML or JSON, right? And then that would be passed into Ajax. Okay? So let's keep going. I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. So what we want to do now is we're going to concatenate some of our variables and create some HTML. So we're going to say HTML, so we could say plus equals. So we're going to say XML dot get elements by tag name. Okay. And we're going to say name. And then inside we're going to then get the child nodes. Okay. And then the node value. Okay. And then we're going to add a line break. Okay. And we're going to copy this, and we're just going to change this part to title. So it's going to pull the name and title. Okay? So now, so let's just make sure we're getting this information. So let's alert HTML and just see what's happening. Okay? Here we go. Did I make a mistake? Oh. There we go. It's from my other programming languages. Okay, ready? Here we go. First box. There we go. So there's the first little bit and the second little bit. Okay? So now, instead of using alert box, which is poor practice, we're going to insert it into our document. So we're going to say document.getElement by ID. And what did we call here? Something. So let's give this an ID. We'll call it team. Okay? And we're going to go back here, and we're going to say get element by ID called team, and then set the inner HTML to equal HTML. Okay, we're going to save, and we're going to refresh, and let's try it. Here we go. Okay? So we've effectively included data into our page from the server without refreshing. So let's try again. Let's get rid of this. Where's that other alert box? Oh, here. Okay. So we'll get rid of this, and let's save, and let's try again. Okay. Pretty straightforward, right? Now, Let's see, what else do I want to show you? So now let's try it. Let's do it in Jquery. Okay, you'll see it's a little bit easier in Jquery. Okay, so let's. So I've uploaded all these files, so I'm just going to delete this stuff. Okay, delete, gone. Okay, and so this demo is available. If you want to look at that code again, it's up, and I've been recording. So, okay. So what we want to do now is we're going to use Ajax to do all the stuff we just did in JavaScript, and you'll see it's a little bit easier, but it kind of follows the same method. So the first thing we have to do is again, we've already done this in Jquery. So now what we want to do is we can use. So in our click, we're going to create a Jquery XHR object, and we're going to use the $.ajax function. Okay, and we're going to pass it test.php. Okay, so in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use PHP to generate a JSON file. Okay, and now I think you'll see a little bit more on how we can incorporate a database into this whole thing. Okay, so we've created this object. Okay, and now what we're going to do is, in a similar way, we're going to assign the event handlers. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is assign the done event handler. Okay, so now we're gonna create a function. Okay, and the results get passed in. These are the results that are returned from here. Okay, and now, so we open our curly brace and close. Okay, and then inside here is where we put in our results. So let's do the first thing is let's just log our results. So we'll say console.log, and we'll just log them to see what comes back. Okay, and then we just need a couple of more functions. So we're going to create a fail. Okay, and oops. Okay, and here we're going to have a console.log as well, and we'll just say error. And we'll also have a always function. Okay. And here we'll say console.log complete. Okay? So, this is the basic structure that we had before. Okay? But now we're using Jquery. But it's similar. So let's just see what happens. We're not going to have our test PHP ready, but we'll create that in a minute. So let's refresh this, and let's try. Let's look at our console. Oh, what did it say? File? What was there? Unexpected token var. Oh. Okay, in our click function. Oh, I didn't define a anonymous function here. So it would be like this and this. That should be, yeah, that should work. Okay, let's try it. Oh, 20. Okay, we have an extra. Should be a curly brace here. Okay. Yes, because that closes off that. Let's try it. Oh, another error. Unexpected token. token. Okay, let's see here. Where did we mess up? Oh, so I need this here, and I think I need one more curly brace. I don't know if that's going to work. Let's see. All closed off here. No, let's see. What did that error say? Oh. Okay, we're good to go. So let's try running it. So here we go. Here's the console messages that we got up. So it says first Jquery complained, and it said 404 not found. We haven't created this file yet. That's fine. And then it went into this handler here. So it did an error, and then we also got the complete. So it did finish, but with an error. So see, even in debugging, sometimes it's better to use the console.log rather than alert boxes. Okay, because alert, it freezes everything. Console.log lets you see the flow. Okay, so let's create our PHP file. Okay, so let's go back here. Test.php. Okay. Okay. So this is going to be our server-side file. So what we could do is I'm actually just going to copy and paste because there's a lot of syntax. I'm probably going to mess it up. So let's I'll just steal the old file from the old example here. Here we go. Oops. Okay, so back to our paste. Copy and paste. Okay, so this is my PHP file. Okay, so this is all we're doing. So if I go, let's try it. Let's see what it looks like. We can just visit it, right? Test, not text.php. Okay, so this right here. This is a Json object. Okay? In a similar way, remember we had our XML files? So this is JSON. This is the similar information in that we have name value pairs. But notice, so XML is a little bit more inefficient. Because, look, for every entity, we have 2 labels. Right? But why do we need that? That's a lot of, that's redundant. So, but here we have name value pairs, but there's only one, right? So it says we have a thing called employees, and there are 3 employees, and each employee has a first name and a last name, and the first name of the first employee is John, and the last name of the first employee is Doe. Okay. And so we only, for our labels, we only have 1. Okay? So, let's finish off our JavaScript, our Jquery Ajax command. Okay? So remember, this is what the page looks like. This is what's being returned. Okay, so now let's go back to our JavaScript. Okay, so now instead of, let's still log our result. Actually, let's just do that, and let's run it now that the file exists. So we'll go to the index file, and we'll click here, and we'll look at our console, And oh, result is not defined. Okay, what did I miss there? Oh, result needs to be results. Okay, so see now what we get. Okay, so remember, always, always, always test as you go. Make sure that you're getting something that looks like a JSON object or an XML object. Okay, so now what do we want to do? Let's go back to here. So we'll keep the results, but let's instead of just printing them to the console, let's embed them into our HTML document. Okay, so the way we do that, so what we're going to do now is, so now that we don't have to parse it like we did with XML, now we can just say var object, or whatever we want to call it. Then we use the eval function, okay, and we pass in, so we're going to have two brackets with a string, and then inside again we're going to have two brackets with a double string, and then inside we're going to concatenate the results. Okay, so that'll convert a string into an object. Okay, so let's run that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my source and I'm going to refresh, and I'm going to debug here so we can see our object. Okay, so let's click here, and now, so we've got our results, we can see our results. Okay, now let's step over, and now let's inspect our object here. So look, now we have it's an object. It's a JavaScript object. Okay, so we have employees, and inside employees we have three things. Okay, we even have a length, so we could use for loops and say object.length. We could look in here. So here's our first name and here's our last name. Okay, so can you see now why JSON is quickly overtaking XML? Because normally, your client-side script is almost always going to be JavaScript, and usually the flow is you get data from the server and then you populate it in your document, and it's much easier to do that if you just have a JavaScript object. Okay. Okay. So let's finish this off. So now that we have our object, let's go back to our HTML page, and we'll just change this to message for now. Okay, and what do I have in my example here? Okay, let's try this. So now remember, because we're using Jquery, I mean you could use Jquery in the last example too, but so now we should utilize Jquery and all the neat interface stuff that it can do easily, right? So we can do this. We could say, so let's select on our message. Okay, and then we can say let's hide it first, and then we'll copy this. And now let's say text equals, we're going to set text to be the object, employees 1 dot first name. Okay, and then let's say message, we'll copy this again, dot fade in 2 seconds. Okay, let's try it. Oh, we'll get rid of our breakpoint. There we go. Okay. So now you guys really have the entire flow of information. You have that down. Well, maybe you don't have it down, but I've taught you that. Okay, so now you can go from front end all the way to the back end of the database, okay, and back. That's what this is all about, right? Is you're creating the interface with HTML and JavaScript and CSS, right? So you're collecting the data and then you're sending it to the database, which is either stored or you're retrieving information from the database and you're sticking it into the interface. Okay? Any questions about what we looked at as far as Ajax? Let's just look through these notes quickly, make sure I've covered everything. Okay. Looked at that. Shorthand. Okay. So okay, you know what? I think I'm going to end a little bit early today. Let you guys sort of absorb that. Give you some time to work on your assignment that's due next week, and I'll give you some time to get into your groups for the group project, and then also for last week's lab, because it was server side, I'll have to, for your mark, come and show me at some point in the next little while. Okay, I'll come over, I'll take a look. You can show me. So I asked you to create a authentication system for your card, right? Okay, so here's for this week's lab. What I want you to do is use Ajax, okay, to load your card. So your card should start blank when you first load it, and then you can have either a button or something, some way of initiating, and then you can do one of two things. You can have a hard-coded JSON file, like the one. So you could have. We looked at the examples here. So you could have a hard-coded. You can use XML. So you could store it in a hard-coded file like this, or you could store it in a hard-coded JSON file. Where's my other one here? Did I have the... Yeah, here. No. Here we go. So you could have it as a hard-coded JSON file, so just a file. Okay? Or what you can do is you can generate a JSON object or XML dynamically in a PHP file. And if you don't have to do this for marks, this isn't a requirement, but if you really want to, if you guys want to learn this stuff, right, what you should try and do is generate a JSON object from the information in your database. Okay? So that's going to take a little bit of string handling and string manipulation. Okay, because the way it's going to work is you're going to do your SQL query, right? You're going to get your result, then you're going to run your for loop that iterates through your query, and instead of just echoing HTML, you want to echo like this stuff. So you could copy and paste this and use this. So instead of here, instead of John, you would have a PHP variable, right? And this would be not hard coded like this, but as part of a loop. Okay? That's making sense to you guys, right? Let me know if I'm just really glossing over. I am glossing over it, but just let me know if you don't fully understand that path, right? Okay, so does everyone know what I want you to do for next week's lab? So you should load the information, so your card should be blank, let's say. No picture, no text. And there should be a button saying load card. Then you click on that button, and then it loads the information without refreshing the page. It loads the information either from a static XML or JSON file, or from a dynamic. Okay, that's the minimum that you have to do. Or if you really want to go the extra mile and learn this stuff, you can generate the JSON file dynamically using PHP based on information pulled from your database. Okay? If you can do that, you are well on your way to becoming a professional web developer. And you will be familiar with not all of the tools. There are many, many tools we haven't looked at in this course. But you are familiar now, once you finish this course, you are familiar now with at least one set of tools that will allow you to create a website end to end. Okay? So there's going to be other things, right? There's going to, we didn't really look at ASP much in this course. It's really similar to PHP. Okay? But you understand that concept now of a server-side script. Same thing with databases. We only looked at one type of database. But the concept is the same. If you use, there are many types of databases out there, but in general the concept is the same. Okay? Okay. Any questions about this week's lab? Or about the final test coming up? Or about the group assignment that I'm going to assign next week? So what I'll do, I'm going to find out when the last day for marks are. And what I'll do is I'll make the final assignment due after the 19th, if I can. Because I need like at least a day or two to mark you guys, and then submit your marks. Okay? So I'll find out when that last. So you'll have more than 2 weeks. 'Cause 2 weeks is going to be pretty tight. Okay? But remember that doing the assignment will be good practice for the test. Okay? Any questions? Well, there's nothing really to post. I mean, the information that you need. So just remember, it's going to be on eCentennial.
No.
Okay. It's going to be. There's going to be. I usually do a third. So a third will be programming questions. Okay, but they'll be small little chunks. I'm not going to say. It's not going to be anywhere near the complexity of the midterm because that was an open book test. Okay, so different. It's a different test environment, so the test questions are going to be a little different. There'll be more. So, for example, I might give you the shell of what we were working with today, maybe those function calls, and I might say, okay, fill this, and I might give you an index file, give you some HTML, give you a little bit of JavaScript, and say, okay, finish this. Make it so that this will, when making an Ajax call, will put this information. So that's two. You have to be able to read the code, understand what it's doing, and then finish off the code a little bit as well. Okay? So a third of that, and then a third long answer. Right? So I might ask you, what is Ajax? What is Ajax? What do you use Ajax for? Okay, so maybe 1 mark for telling me it means asynchronous JavaScript and XML, and then another mark for saying it allows you to refresh items on the page without reloading. It's asynchronous, so it's maybe a little more complex, and it basically allows, it gives the user a more desktop-like experience, something like that. So long answer questions like that. And then probably another third will be maybe a mixed bag. So maybe like 1 or 2 multiple choice. Maybe. I don't really like multiple choice, but I might throw a few in there, just easy ones, something like that. Maybe a few short answer questions. So I might say, what are the 3, name 3 server-side technologies, name 3 client-side technologies that we work with, right? And then you just have 1 point for each name, something like that. Okay, so I think it'll be somewhere between 1.5 hours, 2 hours. I haven't authored it yet, so I don't. Cause it's going to be different. This course was a little bit different. We started late, so I'm not going to give you the same test that the other section did because it's not fair to you guys. You guys had sort of a different course, so it'll be geared towards what we covered in class. Okay, so also remember it'll cover everything. So don't just focus on the server side stuff. Refresh if your HTML is a little rusty, maybe do that stuff again. Okay.
30% for everything you said, right?
About a third, a third, a third, more or less. That's how I'll split it off. Okay. So the best way to study for this stuff is to do the assignments. Right. And then maybe for the long answer stuff, like so for example here, some of these slides that I posted, the notes. So like reading this stuff here, and maybe making your own notes would probably help you for the long answer stuff. So this is the type of information that you would want to include in your long answer. Okay? So, you could change this to what is Ajax and how does it work? And then, I wouldn't expect all of this, but word for word, but a good chunk. So you should be able to hit on all of these points. You should be able to say, so it's async, right? It lets you receive data from a web server without reloading the page. At least you should be able to say that, right? And then, what else? And then maybe be able to describe a little bit about it. So to send an Ajax request, it uses an object using this, okay, HTTP request object. And then you say a little bit about this, right? So where is it used? How would you use it? Well, I would use it to make my website more user-friendly and more like the desktop. And you could say, pages like Google and YouTube and all, many, many popular pages such as yada, 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 use Ajax. Okay, and quite honestly, if you name a couple of the major ones, that'll probably be a true statement. Okay? So, and then some of, like this stuff here, for me, reviewing stuff like this, that doesn't help me. If I just read that one in my ears and then who knows where it goes, but it doesn't stick. In order for stuff like this to stick, I have to work with it. That's why I'm saying it's a good idea to do the assignments, to study. Okay? Like this, the high level stuff, that you can kind of remember that. But also, you should, by working with it, you should have this knowledge implicit. This knowledge will be implied, right? Because you've used it, right? It's like you've driven a car. You don't have to read about how cars move you from one place to another. You've been in one, so you know that that's what they do. Same thing with this technology. Okay? So any more questions about the final? Or any questions at all? How much? Let's see. I don't think I've... Yes, I uploaded one last night. And so I just have today. And here, let me stop this one.